goes from, oh, I'm special, they'll break the law for me, and then as you get older, it's like, what the fuck? You weren't special. You were just easy. You were just easy to manipulate. You were an easy catch. You were fresh. Like, these men look at these young girls like, oh, I'm probably gonna take her virginity. Like, they want some like easy, fresh meat. Like, it's not that you're special. It's really not. Like, it's because these older women aren't gonna go for their bullshit, and these older women aren't gonna give it up that easy, and they know just because of their age, you're gonna think it's something special going on, and it's literally not that at all. It's literally not.
Who's molesting you?
Well, I was molested by my mom's ex-boyfriend from 3 to 6, and then I was molested by my from 13 to 16.
Hold on.
And then I had 30-year-old boyfriends when I was 16, 17, 18.
Where's he still out living his life?
He's living his life. Too.
Is that used to be with you?
Mm-hmm.
He was molesting you?
Yeah.
Do you want to molest him?
No.
What the fuck?
Living his best life.
Oh my God.
Working at a car dealership in Florida.
Did you tell somebody?
Yeah, I did.
They believe you?
They believe me. The feds did shit.
The who? The feds?
Mm-hmm.
So did he go to jail?
No.
Why not?
I don't know.
You didn't press the issue?
Nobody ever goes to jail when it comes to me.
Why you think that?
I don't know. They just never do. Both people that did something to me never went to jail.
What did your mama do to the ex-boyfriend?
She just got rid of him.
Did she try to beat his ass, shoot him, nothing? You should have called me. I wish you would have knocked. Oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
Now, today we are going to be doing an analysis on Danielle, also known as Bhad Bhabie. The reason being, I recently saw a video pop up in my recommendations where she was talking a little bit about a lot of the sexual abuse that she's endured since she was a child. And I felt compelled to talk about her case because I recently posted a video breaking down how a lot of women's rights to passage to womanhood, it was marked with exceptional wounds. And in that analysis, I made specific connections to sexual exploitation. And I couldn't help but feel for Danielle. And I actually took a couple notes to better prepare because it was jam-packed, as we could see from some of the videos I referenced at the very beginning where she was talking about certain things that she had gone through. I want to say this. If anyone is questioning, well, maybe she was just moving too fast when she was young, maybe she let off certain signals, I'm going to make this stance, and I'm going to be honest with you. I don't really care who doesn't like it. A minor is always innocent in the event where an adult oversteps certain boundaries. A minor is always innocent in my book, and you want to know the reason why? Because a minor doesn't know better, however, an adult does. I also want to make the connection between a lack of covering. Everyone buckle up because this one's gonna get pretty heavy. The lack of covering that was depicted when it came to her parents. I'm not sure if Danielle's father was present or if there was consistent, caretaking from the father figure. I'm not too sure. But if that is lacking, that's one lack of a covering. And then what happens when you have to unpack another lack when it comes to a parental figure who is physically present, but emotionally and mentally they left you out in the open. Now, I want to say this because I want to be respectful. I typically don't even cover, people who are in the limelight because I feel like I'm not an investigative journalist. I'm not a blogger. I'm not a celebrity blogger. So I definitely try to stay in my lane. However, this case, I felt compelled to talk about and to provide alternative analyses. This isn't any shade to Danielle's mother whatsoever. What I'm getting at is when you are the child at the receiving end of any kind of neglect, and neglect isn't limited to physical neglect. It can also look like emotional, mental, psychological neglect. So sometimes out of desperation, a parent who has acknowledged the fact their child has gone through something very traumatic, what they would try to do is some kind of damage control. But the way that they go about it may not always be constructive to their child's well-being. I'm gonna break this down, the connection I'm trying to make. Her mother may have tried to advocate for her daughter by putting her in the limelight and getting her to rub shoulders with certain people who can assist financially, who could put her and her daughter in a better position financially, not realizing that in the process of doing so, it was not only exploiting a wound that was still unaddressed regarding a trauma that Danielle had went through, but it was throwing her into another lion's den where that abuse was going to be perpetuated. Oof, okay. Because you and your daughter are coming into an arena with visible baggage. Predatory personalities, and I've been talking about this, I really encourage you guys to start getting these publications so that you're up on game. Predatory personalities utilize this baggage to capitalize on it. It could be financially, it could be sexually. If they realize that you and your child do not have a covering of some sort, and a covering isn't always connected to another person, if you're not up on game, if you're not insightful, if you can't, quote unquote, read the room, you don't realize that predatory person sense that. And they're going to seize the opportunity to take advantage of your daughter or your son. I believe that what Danielle experienced as she started to get a little bit older, because I was shocked to hear she was on OF and she was underage. At least that's the research that I found. She was underage when she established a profile on OF, and from the statistics, it appeared that there were adult men who were subscribing to her page. So her success was contingent upon her sexuality. This is only adding salt to an unaddressed open wound related to her trauma, her sexual trauma. What makes this even worse is in industries, and it's not just limited to obviously, the sex industry such as OF, but in any industry where a woman is under the impression that her sexuality and her sex appeal, her appearance can propel her forward, right? And in a manner that's rooted in exploitation. I want to let that be known, because obviously the beauty industry, it's based off of how a woman looks, right? Or how certain women look when they utilize certain products, hair products, etc. But there are other industries where a woman's looks, her sexuality, and her sex appeal can actually be exploited against her. But she may not know that when the block is hot. What do I mean by the block is hot? When you're fresh meat, such as what Danielle mentioned, I actually respect the fact that Danielle was so honest and she was transparent about the fact, don't follow in my footsteps, because I had to earn these scars because people didn't put me up on game. And I also want to throw this out there to set a record straight. I'm not the woman who's coming up here having these conversations, pointing fingers or looking down at any other woman. That's not my ministry. I acknowledge the fact that there are young women out there, such as what Danielle was going through when she was underage, and no one around her put her up on game. No one around her established a covering for that baby. Back to what I was getting to. certain industries, even though at a glance in the beginning your sexuality seems like it's going to put you in a better position, in the long run it's not a wise investment. I actually put this in the comment section. Someone was talking about another influencer, I can't remember, but it's a social media influencer, and I was transparent with the person who put the comment under my video and said, I'm not too familiar with the influencer, but I have been hearing certain, narratives about her and about the kind of content that she makes. And I stated that I do not think it's a wise investment for her in the long run as a young woman, putting all of your eggs in a basket of appeasing to a male population. I also want to throw out this disclaimer. I am not a male basher. I have a whole analysis dissecting, points against misogyny and misandry. So I'm not getting at that, but I am a realist, okay? Because I know that some women are being thrown into the lion's den and they're not ready because they don't have the knowledge. So now that I also got that disclaimer out the way, for certain women in certain environments where it appears that your sex appeal and your sexuality is going to be a benefit to you, I encourage you to not put your eggs in that basket. And it's because if you allow certain people who are prioritizing that to dictate your success, you have to be aware of the fact that these types of individuals who operate from those principles understand that there's a time limit to your sex appeal and your sexuality in those systems. I also encourage you guys to revisit certain excerpts in the book In the Lion's Den, Navigating Systems of Power, such as Made to Master, Watch Where You Lay. Certain people will switch up on you when they feel like you are quote unquote damaged goods. This is another excerpt in the book All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. And I actually dissected that excerpt in one of my more recent analyses. I believe that analysis was titled, what was it titled? All I know is that Marilyn Monroe and Anna Nicole Smith are on the thumbnail. I can't remember what I titled it, but I strongly encourage you to go back and watch that because I think this video was a great branch off from it. It's unfortunate, but it's real. Even though as women, as a collective, the female population, we can acknowledge, we can respect that you can be beautiful at any age. But when you are operating in a misogynistic environment, there's a cap. There's a limit to what they perceive as sexy. There's a window of opportunity when they feel like you're hot and ready, like a Little Caesar's pizza, such as what Danielle's story depicted. And then there's a cap limit to where they feel like, all right, we're done with you. We're going to bring the new young, hot and ready talent or person in here. So me coming on this platform as a woman and giving other young women a heads up as far as don't lead with, quote unquote, being the sex kitten to the opposite population. Because when you are in a situation to where someone chews you up and spits you out because you aren't aware of the fact that they've placed a limitation on what beauty is, they've set a limitation on what they feel like your prime is, and you don't have a backup plan. For people who rely on consumers, you haven't even established a population or an audience outside of your sex appeal or outside of someone being sexually attracted to you. That's a no-go. So I'm glad that comment actually came back around full circle for this analysis, because it's really important for women, especially young women, to understand that. Because a lot of women, it's so unfortunate. They come in and they're young, they have their life ahead of them, and then before they know it, the rug is pulled from under their feet and they don't have any backup plan. I also want to revisit the sexual abuse that she endured. As I was studying Danielle's case, I realized that there was a cycle of romantically entertaining older men. It wasn't a red flag to her because it was a direct connection to her mother's boyfriend who sexually abused her. So, yet again, that lack of covering to where someone can nip that in the bud and be like, wait a minute, I see a pattern going on. We need to address this. So it wasn't sending signals off to her that, wait a minute, I'm underage and you have someone who's a grown adult, old enough to be my own parent, and knows that I'm underage, making not even just romantic advances my way, but sexual advances. Unacceptable. As I stated before, I'm not into shaming. I'm here to put young women up on game because I know the lions that they're going to go up against. I also want to highlight this. For a parental figure who's aware of the sexual abuse that their child has gone through and why they don't address it, what I appreciate about Ari is it was an immediate maternal reaction. But that's because Ari has a child. And it's apparent that she's a present mother and doesn't play about her child. Especially not her child's safety, because that's an automatic response that most parents would have. You did what to my child? Now, in Danielle's case, I want to address a smaller population. Ideally, yes, your parent would have a reaction such as how Ari reacted. But what happens when you have children who their parents didn't react that way? Sometimes it's rooted in malice. And I've addressed that in an analysis I posted months ago, talking a little bit about the movie Precious. And Monique's character, and obviously the character Precious, their dynamic in that film. And I broke down the fact that, you know, there are instances where your parent may be envious of the fact that you're being sexually abused by their partner, but they keep you around because they know that that's what's going to keep their partner around. It's a very sadistic and twisted connection and dynamic. So that's an example of malice. However, in Danielle's case, I'm not too sure. I don't know these people personally. I also thought about an alternative. I also believe that sometimes these types of traumatic events get swept under the rug by parents or a parent because the parent feels guilty. And it's easier for them to go into a damage control tactic rather than facing it head on and being like, I dropped the ball on this one, baby, and I'm sorry. And we need to go get you some, we need to go get you some kind of counsel. We need to provide a covering for you so that you're able to heal from this. And so that you don't keep attracting people who harm you. Some parents don't take that approach because it requires you sitting with the reality of what happened. Other parents, as I stated before, go into a damage control strategy because they feel guilty. Some parents, and this is dissected in detail in the book All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. I will give people a heads up. That publication is triggering through and through. So if you're someone who you prefer to like make connections in your private time between certain traumatic events that you've endured and come to your own conclusions about, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was this, or I wasn't able to make this connection until, you know, this moment. I strongly encourage you to, you know, be prepared, for lack of better words, because it definitely gets into the nitty-gritty. But the book also breaks down how that guilt plays out in a parent and child dynamic, especially within a situation where the child experienced some kind of abuse and trauma. But the reason why sometimes they will go into that damage control strategy is because they are not only trying to move over the situation with some kind of solution in their mind, but also some parents internalize it as, if we don't address it, hopefully my child will move on from it as well and they'll forget it. But there are some things that people experience where that scar isn't going to be able to heal unless it receives proper attention. They need to go to a specialist. Now, I'm a believer. I know who my specialist is. My specialist is God. My specialist is the Holy Spirit, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's who my specialist is, right? So whatever that specialist is going to be for other people regarding their specific traumas and situations, you need to identify that. And as a parent, if you're coming across, I know I have a lot of parents on my channel, and I appreciate you all so much. If you're a parent, and God forbid, anything like this is on the horizon, I'm not going to speak it into existence and say it will come to pass, but say anything like this, you get an inkling about someone, you ask your child about, hey, what happened with that one person who was coaching you, that one person who asked if they could mentor you, you check in with them. And you have certain resources set in place so that your child has a covering even when you're not around, even when you're not physically present. So whatever that covering is, you find another ally that your child can confide in when they're in an environment and you're somewhere else. Spiritually, pray over your babies, teach your babies how to pray over themselves. Teach your children about discernment and intuition. I don't care how young you are, you're never too young for discernment and intuition. I could go into some stories as far as certain things that I went through when I was younger, but I think it's a little bit too deep for you two. So I'll figure out what to do with that, because I'm actually thinking about establishing a possible group where we meet up on Zoom and women can bring their All Strings Attached, the Queen's Coral books, and talk a little bit about different excerpts in the book and how it connected to some of their, experiences. And it will be free of charge. I really want women to have a safe haven to discuss these things, because unfortunately, such as what Danielle described, it's either getting swept under the rug where people aren't addressing it at all, or the flip side, you have people who are shaming you for it and victim blaming you, which is also unacceptable. So feel free to let me know in the comments if that's something that you all would be interested in me doing. Now, I also want to bring up an instance of how these coverings work. And I don't know if this girl, I don't know if she had a praying mother or a praying grandmother or what. But I was working in a residential facility. For everyone who has heard me say this before, I'm sorry. You're going to have to hear it again. But I was working in a residential facility with youth. And there was one girl in that environment. Immediately, once I came into the setting, there were certain staff members who were labeling her as like the problem. And I thank God every single day that I am an independent thinker. I've never been someone to jump on a bandwagon of not liking somebody. And if anyone is carrying on with that narrative, they're a bold-faced liar. I'm gonna go ahead and put that out right now. Only time that I'll switch up, and I still don't even go below the juggler. Only time that I'll switch up is if you try to sneak this and say something slick to me or about me, or if you did something that was shady. Now, I'm also a fair shooter. You might have someone that you don't like and that you have beef with, but if they're showing love to me, I'm not ganging up on you. I'm respecting the fact that they acknowledge, okay, well, you're cool, and I respect what you have going on, and I respect what they have going on. So it's just not in my character. I don't get down like that. I'm an independent thinker. I've never had to jump on a bandwagon for anything. Now, if I got an issue with somebody, trust and believe it's substantiated with something that happened between you and I, not a group, but you and I. And I took mental note of it. But nevertheless, as I was coming into that environment, I said, yeah, I hear what they're saying, but I'm gonna listen to this girl. She was really sweet and she gravitated towards me instantly. Could it possibly be because she was like, all right, this is a new person, so I finally got like a fresh start. I got someone who has a fresh perspective of me, possibly, and I'm not mad at that. But my interactions with this young woman was never negative. She was honest. That's the only thing that I'll say about her. Sometimes she had an issue with overstepping. She would overstep a little bit, like when it came to her peers and things like that. But she was open to the correction. If you let her know, like, okay, wait a minute, give this other person a chance to, share their side of the story. If you just corrected her as if she was a human being, she was receptive to the feedback. I was so grateful that I didn't allow these people to put a bug in my ear to treat this young woman negatively, because I ended up learning later on down the line that this young woman was a victim of abuse, very similar to Danielle's story. And I said, I'm so grateful that I didn't jump on this hate train against this young, innocent girl. She's a child under me. No, I'm not clicking up with grown adults to act funny towards this one girl or to mess up her progress. I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. I was so grateful when I was able to speak with one of her family members, because I was actually counseling. My role was to counsel the youth in that environment. And we had to also do family meetings, family visits, where we would all come together and talk a little bit about the child's progress, certain interventions that the family members could utilize for their kids. And lo and behold, her family member who came to visit her opened up to me and was like, I trust you. I trust you with my baby. And I want to say this. Some people, and maybe this resonates for someone listening, some people, you have a knack for seeing potential in other individuals. So lean into that. You don't know why God sent you into a certain place. You don't know why God put it on your heart to advocate for a certain person, and be obedient to it. Because I'll never forget, I was in middle school and I had a teacher, and she always had this banner in her classroom, and it said, what is right is not always popular, and what is popular is not always right. Now that was years ago. I was in middle school and I still remember that banner because it's a true statement. So God may be calling you to advocate for someone, and it may not be popular. People may be on a bandwagon coming up against someone just because it's the cliquish and the funny thing to do at a given point in time. But that doesn't mean it's right. And in the end, once justice and vindication start spinning that block, you have blood on your hands and you're going to have to eat that. Okay? Now, I want to wrap this video up by reading from a specific excerpt in the book, All Strings Attached, The Queen's Quarrel. I might actually read a couple to, just add validity to some of the points that I made in respect to Danielle's case. Sexploitation, Madonna whore complex. As a woman, one has to be careful of internalizing sexual attraction as love and fidelity. Although their physical is satisfied with the one who is appeasing their sensual desires, their mental gravitates towards the woman who presents with characteristics that are compatible with caretaking and nurturing. As a byproduct, he will protect what is pure and exploit what brings pleasure. Lastly, I want to read from the excerpt titled The Neglectful Parent Wound, and it reads, trigger warning. This excerpt addresses specific childhood traumas. We will address traumatic experiences, examples given, physical, sexual, emotional, or mental. For many individuals, these traumatic experiences became complex after they mustered up the courage to confide about these traumatic events in a caregiver or parent, but were dismissed. A dismissive response from a caregiver results in the tendency to internalize negative experiences and a brewing resentment for caregivers. It's in the event of trauma that children learn their parents are humans, not heroes. A neglectful parent is often operating from a narcissistic standpoint. The parent's inability and unwillingness to face the reality that a traumatic tragedy happened to their child protects them from addressing the need to take accountability. So I know this was a heavier analysis, you guys, but feel free to let me know if you all would like to have these kinds of discussions as a collective, but in a more private group, in a private setting. Let me know if you all are interested in that, because I'm open to doing so. But nevertheless, that's all that I have for this video today. Thank you all for whoever sat with me to the end and, who was able to sit through such a heavy topic. But of course, I want to hear you all's comments, opinions, perspectives, personal experiences, if you're open and comfortable with sharing, of course. And I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next analysis, babes. Take care.